Namaste. This is Yoga Therapy Podcast, and I'm your host, Shira, yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and Ayurvedic wellness educator. In these conversations with experts in the field of yoga therapy, you'll find out what it is and how it can help you and your loved ones to reclaim well-being. We'll touch on physical as well as mental health, physiology, emotions, women's health, spiritual well-being, goddesses, and self-development in the fullest sense. Listening to another story can change ours, so thank you for showing up, and let's begin this journey together. So hello everyone, today we're here with Andreas Gonzalez. So he's a yoga teacher, he's an author and a mindfulness coach.
Yeah, teacher, instructor, yeah, all those things.
Okay, and you're one of the co-founders of Holistic Life Foundation. So you're going to tell us all about this amazing foundation. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on and for helping us represent the Holistic Life Foundation here on your podcast. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, wonderful. So tell us, first of all, the yoga story. How did you get to yoga?
Yeah, so my two business partners, they actually began yoga when they were little kids. So it was Ali and Atman. They had a godfather who was really into the yoga, and their father was as well. So they tell me stories of them when they're little kids and they wake up in the morning and they'd go and eat breakfast and watch their cartoons, and their dad would be in like a headstand on his military blanket, and they'd just be looking at him and I think it was kind of weird, but then he would make them meditate every single morning. And they always kind of joke, like we were little kids then, we weren't taking it too serious. If anything, we were trying to make each other laugh a little and like get each other in trouble. So they had a little bit of a practice. I did not. I met them in college. And I would love to say that I met them at a meditation class or a yoga class, but I didn't, it was college. So we met out having a good time, having a few drinks, right? And what happened was that after some of those nights of having a few beverages, we would talk to each other and we'd start philosophizing stuff like, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of all this? Why are we here? What's the goal of all this? And the one thing that we all noticed, and it was really evident to us, was that there was a lot of suffering in the world. And we felt like there weren't a lot of people doing anything about it. So we had this idea that we wanted to be these superheroes. We wanted to save the world. And we had no idea how we were going to do this, right? We had no idea at all. But one day we're hanging at their godfather's house. We're watching some basketball. And he had always trying to put them on to the yoga practice. There'd be throughout their childhood, he's always like, hey, don't forget to do this breath, or don't forget to do this, or meditate, and it'll make this happen. And they always thought he was kind of weird with that type of stuff. But
are they brothers?
They're brothers, actually. Yeah. And they don't really look the same. So when you see them, we always joke it's in the eyes, because they same mother, same father, but they don't really physically look the same. And so that night we're sitting there, and Atman, the younger brother, he finds this book on Uncle Will. That's our teacher's name, Uncle Will, on Uncle Will's altar. And it's a book on these really, really deep meditations. And something to us, at that time, this is in 2000, 2001, yoga isn't as popular as it is now. Conceptually, we think the yoga at that time, in my mind, was just the bending and stretching. But in this book, it was just meditations. And it had some super cool results that you would get from the meditation. Stuff that's pretty esoteric, right? Where he was very specific when we asked him, we were like, hey, we want to learn this stuff. And he's like, well, why do you want to learn this stuff? And we're like, well, look at this. It looks like it's going to give us superpowers or something like that. And he's like, those are some of the byproducts of the practice, but that's not the purpose. Yeah. But he said, if you really want to learn this, he made us promise two things. He said, one, I don't want to teach students. I only want to teach teachers. So the way he worded it was, I don't want no devotees. He's like, I want teachers, right? Our teacher was really amazing. And then he said, and we agreed to that. We're like, that's no problem. Whatever you teach us, we'll make sure we teach other people. And then he said, and you had to show up tomorrow at 4 a.m. And it's like midnight. Wow. We've had a few beverages. You could tell he was trying to test us a little, right? Yeah. But we were ready. We were really curious about this. So, early in the morning, we're knocking on his door, and he's surprised. You can tell when he opens his little blinds, like, oh, they actually showed up. And that's when my journey started. So he started with a lot of we call them mat-based practices, but it's more the physical movement. When we're actually hitting the yoga mat, we're doing the hatha. So we're doing some kriya, he started getting to start doing breath work, a lot of the pranayama practices, and really focusing on our physical bodies and making sure that our bodies are almost ready for the stillness that we're about to bring to our minds.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'd keep pushing us with the breath work. And, it got to a point where once he felt like our bodies and our minds were stilled enough and ready, that's when we started getting into the more, what we would say, off the mat practices. Is just for us, our teacher would always say, yoga isn't something you do, it's something you are.
Mm-hmm.
So he would say that, hey, you could sit on that mat and you could do the best headstands. You could do every pose flawlessly, and you could sit there for 3 hours out your day. And he would say, but then there's 21 hours left in the day, and you can't just be a butthead to everybody for those 21 hours, right? He said, you have to live this type of concept of, yoga means union. And that's what he would stress to us is that we are all one, and that love is the most powerful force in the universe, and it's the uniting force. So the last, I would say, 8 years of his teachings, all we would talk about is oneness, unity, and love.
Wow.
Based and entrenched in the concepts of us teaching this movement practice, this breath work, and these meditation practices. So those 2 years after he started getting us into our practice, that's when I would say that was my beginning and the introduction to yoga, and what really changed my life, because I learned who my real self was. Mm-hmm. I started loving my real self, not Andy and the ego and the senses, but my infinite self, my true self. And I started seeing myself in others, and everyone became a reflection of me. And I started loving them. And I started seeing the world through different eyes and hearing the world through different ears. And it was such an amazing transformation. And the same was happening with Ali and Atman, that we were like, we need to share this with people.
It's beautiful that you were experiencing this together. Like you could share, most yogis do it in their own trajectory. So it's a singular path. And then you don't have people so much to speak about. What's your experience? This is really great.
Oh, it was a blessing. Certainly was a blessing. We always say that, first off, if it wasn't the teacher that taught me, I probably wouldn't be doing this work, because he was a very unique individual. We call him like the Sam Jackson of yoga, because he talk.
He sounds like it.
He does.
Kind of the image I had.
There you go. He is a little vulgar with some of his phrasings. He just didn't praise himself. But he's amazing. Just a loving, compassionate man. Been through a lot.
You gotta be hard to get people to that place of love.
Exactly, for sure. And he was like a Black Panther. He had gone through life, as a, African-American man in Baltimore City, in America. So he had seen all the racism that had gone on. He had seen the impact that had. And still, all he was about was love and oneness and unity. So it was so powerful to have him teach us. And then to have my two brothers with me, they're my brothers. At the time, they were just, dear friends of mine. It was essential, because the first 8 years we did all the work that we did with the Holistic Life Foundation. We did everything for free. And I don't know if during some of the first 8 years, we did everything for free. Okay. We weren't getting funded yet. We just knew this was our mission, and this is what we were supposed to do, because again, we saw that transformation occur within us, and we wanted everyone else to feel it.
Yeah.
I mean, there was times where our friends would come over. We had graduated college. So we all have good degrees from a nice college. And we're living in one of the worst neighborhoods in Baltimore, if not in America. We don't have any money. We don't have any like cool clothes or shoes or cars. And our friends would come over and they'd say, like, what are y'all doing? Like, get your lives together. And we're like, what do you mean? They're like, and they would say all those things, these material things that we don't have. But it would be funny because they would always question us, like, y'all don't have any of that stuff, but you're still so happy. Like, you're happier than most of the people we know. And that's when we would question them, like, so let me get this right. We're doing the wrong thing. But you who have all those things that you say we're missing, you with the nice job and the car and the house and the clothes and shoes, and you're miserable. You know, like, so maybe you should listen to what's going on with us and what we're doing, you know. Like, and it was funny because eventually, I would say, like, it's been 5 years now, you know, so since then, another 10 years later almost, then our friends are finally like, hey, you think you could maybe teach me some of that yoga stuff you've been always trying to teach me before, you know? But it was funny, like having those guys with me when we were broke, or when people judged us, or an obstacle was presented, or we stumbled and fell in terms of our mission. I had two people at my side that I was like, well, I'm broke, but so were they. And
Yeah.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
that person's treating me
But
bad,
there's
but
no shame.
nah, exactly. So to
Can
have
I
them,
just ask, did you work on the side as well?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we had jobs at this. There's a clinic here. It's like a medical place called Shepard Pratt, and we were like these coordinators. So we would help med monitor people, cook their food for them,
Oh, wow.
help them out in any way. It was like a mental place where people would come and they were going through struggles in life. And it was funny, we would even start incorporating some of the yoga into our sessions. So like
Of
they'd want us
course.
to talk about, they'd give us a subject to talk about, and we're like, can we teach them some breathing techniques? I think this is going to help them out better. And we loved our time there, but it was difficult because that's the weekend. And
Mm.
during the weekend, we worked 24 hours straight, basically, because we worked 2 12-hour shifts. And then throughout the week, we're still running our day-long program. So all throughout the week, we're building this organization. We're running an after-school program. We're going to other after-school programs. So we're working full-time jobs. Then we had these side jobs, but the full-time job of the Holistic Life Foundation, we weren't getting paid for anything at that moment.
Oh. So can you tell us about what you needed to do to get this started? Because like I told you before, I would love to start this, and I know lots of people would love to start this kind of organizations. Where do you need to start? Is
I would
it
say,
the beginning, or is it thousands of little steps?
I would definitely say, the longest journey definitely starts with one step, but there's definitely thousands of them in this one.
Yeah.
I would say initially, the key, and we stress this with anybody, when they come to a training or they're asking us, is to have your own practice.
Yeah.
So start getting into some type of contemplative practice, and it can be whatever you want. We're not picky about it. We don't say, hey, you have to practice yoga, or you have to practice mindfulness, or what, but you got to have some form of practice so that when you are sharing what these experiences, it's authentic, right?
Yeah,
And
of course.
it comes from your experience. Our teacher used to always say, you have to be a scientist. Don't believe anything I'm saying. I could be lying to you.
Try. Yeah.
Try and see what it does for you. So I would say initially have a practice, find those techniques that you think are benefiting you.
Yeah, of course. No, I agree. But I mean, the practical steps of making it a community service, a program that you can bring into different places. Because I mean, I've been teaching for 15 years, and I've been practicing for 32 years. So that's not the thing. But how do we do the practical steps? Could you kind of sum it down to a few simple key ideas?
Yeah, I guess I would say the next step, once you have your practice, because we think that's so important. So you have that down, then you got to find a space, whether it's a school, a community center, a building that you can start running programs at. And you have to be able to have access to the space, like fully. So if it's a school, for example, the headmaster or the principal has to be fully on board and allowing you to do what you need to do, because that's always an issue too. We've had people who start programs and they're like, I have this space, but I'm really restricted with everything that I need to do. Like, that's just not going to work. You need to have a space and you need to have participants. And that's just the first thing. Anyway, you start showing these practices to other individuals, because that's what happened with us. We were just three guys who had never taught kids ever before. And we just had an opportunity with 15 kids, 15 fifth grade boys. They were their quote unquote problem kids. And they wanted us to teach them football, American football. And we were like, well, it seems weird that you want us to teach the problem kids to bash into each other instead, right? Instead, could we teach them yoga? Because we saw the benefits that were happening with us. And we had that opportunity. And that was where everything started, because then instead of 10 of those boys being at detention after week 1, only 7 are. And then another week passes. Now there's only 2.
But these kids are usually the most driven. Like I also teach at a school, and the kids who are the most problematic, if you get them doing quite difficult practice, they enjoy it because they need something to be focused on. And I saw in one of your videos that you get the kids to teach as well. So I was doing that as well in a different way. I would have the cards, those little cards, and I would hide them in the room. And then after we've done a few practices and some salutation, then they can go look for the cards. And then each child has that card and they are teaching that practice. And it's
That's
really
awesome.
Yeah, it's really nice to see them because they blossom and they feel empowered and like a leader in that moment.
For sure. We find that usually the kids that are the most disruptive are natural leaders. They're natural. They really are. They're naturally, but they just want attention.
Yes.
I always joke like I can usually walk into a room and I'll look and I'll be like, oh, that one right there, he's gonna that's my assistant today. Cause I could see
exactly.
they're trying to disrupt the class, but they're leaders. So I always joke, I was like, they could be the president or they could be a gangster. They can
mafia.
The mafia, right? But they're going to sway people, and that's the ones you want to bring on. And then the strategy never fails. So you bring that disruptive student up to the front and you say, all right, you're going to help me out. And now they're excited because all eyes are on them. And that's what they wanted anyways. Right. And then at one point, never fails, the kid look at me and they'll be like, hey man, but they're not listening to me. And I'm like, oh, how does that feel? And that's when the light bulb pops on and they're like, oh, that's what I do, huh? And it's like, yeah, it's exactly. Now you know how we feel when you're acting like that. And then they learn, right? They learn that in order to be able to come up to the front and lead and be that teacher and have all eyes on them, that they have to be a good student as well. And that's that reciprocal teaching model we use. So, we got it from our teacher when he said, I don't want any students. I only want teachers. So we do the same thing. If you were to come to our after school program when Ali Atman and I were running it, now we have other individuals facilitating all that, you would see a kindergartner leading everyone through sun salutations because we wanted them to be in the front. It empowers them. It gives them that strength to say, look at me. I can teach people who are older than me and I got this. And then they go home into their communities and that's when they make a really big difference. That's when we give them homework assignments. We say, all right, hey, y'all know how to do belly breathing? All right, well, today, your homework assignment is when you go home, I want you to teach one person, anybody, how to do some belly breathing. And the kids will be creative they'll be cute with it. Sometimes they'll come and I'm like, all right, so did y'all do your homework assignment? And, these will be little kids sometimes too, second grade. Yeah, I'm like, who'd you teach how to belly breathe? And they're like, my cat. And I'm like, okay, all right. That's not exactly what I was going for, but that works.
You know what I do? I say, okay, if someone in your family has bad breath, you can teach them this. Or if mommy gets really angry, teach them this so they can help regulate their family.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we do. We make sure we highlight those benefits because we learned earlier on, that 3 guys, can't help the way we want to help.
Yeah.
And we weren't going to be able to do it. It has to grow, So we use the concepts like love zombies is what we like to say, that if we can infect you with love, then you can go out in the world and infect other people with love.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So you have a practice, you have a space.
And then you need, the main next thing is you need support to be able to continue running that. And unless you have funding and finances where you do not need money to put food on your table or a roof over your head, you're going to need some funding. Okay. So I would say for the best way to get funding is to try to incorporate a study into it. And that's not one of our big things. I got to be honest. I mean, we did the first ever randomized controlled trial study on urban youth and mindfulness with Johns Hopkins and Penn State. So we had this amazing study. And when we were presented with this opportunity, it was a wonderful, mentor, friend, researcher, Dr. Mark Greenberg, who reached out and was like, hey, look, we need to do a study to show this stuff works. Yeah. And we're looking at him like, no, we don't. This has been around for thousands of years. Like, we didn't make this stuff up. Like, we know it works. Like, look at what we've done with the kids. I can show you in a week this child transform by using these practices. He's like, yeah, but you need data. And we understood that because in order to get funding, you need to show that this is evidence-based. So we didn't know how important that was until we got that study done. But once we got that study done, since it was the first ever randomized controlled trial study done on urban youth and yoga and mindfulness, and it was at the beginning of this wave now, because now everything is so much more popular, that whenever anyone else did a study, they would always refer to the first one, and it would say curriculum written by the Holistic Life Foundation. So they would reach out to us and ask us, how do we do it? Ask us for tips and pointers. And that's what really got us to start growing.
Wow.
Then once we got a little publicity, we stuck out a little because I'm Puerto Rican and my two business partners are Black. So 3 minority men teaching yoga.
Amazing. Yeah.
Wasn't very common thing. So you go to a conference and we were usually the 3 only men who were minorities at a conference when we would go to yoga conferences.
Wow.
So then we stuck out, and then stuff just kept going.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask, how long was the study?
How long was it? Oh yeah. So we did, so it was 24 weeks, the initial phase. And there's 3 different schools. And then we had control
Kids schools. Yeah.
Yeah. These were in middle schools. And so twice a week for 24 weeks is what we did. And then we did a follow-up as well.
And the guy who wanted to do this research, he reached out to you, or this was through the
my business partner's mother actually was working for his program. He had a program called Paths, Promoting Alternative Thinking Strategies. And it's an SEL program. So he's actually head of on the board of the main SEL program, social emotional learning stuff. Wow. And so their mother was like, you got to check out what my boys are doing. So he just sat down with us. It was hilarious.
It's also important.
It is. Networking and meeting people and talking is so important. But the thing that sold Mark was, so Dr. Greenberg, he comes, we have some lunch with them, and we say, come check out our kids. So he comes to our after school program, and all the kids met on our porch, and these kids are off the hook. And there's this one kid in particular where he is really, really off the hook. He's running around, he's cursing and trying to pick fights with everybody. He's just wilding out. And you could tell Mark's looking at this group like, there's no way these guys are going to get these kids to do yoga, right? So come yoga time, we go upstairs, and we moved to the community center where we had bought them some memberships, and we go up to the yoga room, and the same kid, he doesn't know that Mark knows all these practices because Mark is a practitioner. He's been doing anything, but he sits next to Mark and he starts fixing his posture. He's like, no, you're not sitting right. Because remember, the reciprocal teaching model. And Mark's looking like, this is the same kid that was just cursing and screaming in the streets. And now he's teaching me the right way to breathe, or the right way to do the sun salutation, or how to meditate. And it blew his mind so much. He was like, I need to help y'all. And that's when we started doing the study. And without him, we wouldn't have been as successful. I remember when we first gave him the study, it was, 200 some page curriculum that Ali Ottman and I had put together. And he's like, this looks great, guys. Everything's perfect. We got to set up step by step every day for twice a week, 24 weeks. He's like, now take all the yoga out of it. And we were like, what? All it is yoga. And he's like, no, he's like, just remove the names. Because for some reason he knew back then that people are going to get a little weary when it's Sanskrit words, and they're going to think we're teaching religion in schools. And we're a completely secular organization.
Yeah, not just that, brain switches off when you see a word that you don't know, and then you don't read the rest of the text.
Yeah.
So brain trying to associate. Yeah.
Exactly. So, instead of saying Ujjayi breath, we call it the stress breath. And we just changed everything, but we're still teaching the same techniques to the kids.
Yeah.
And without that, I think that would have been a big step back, because some other organizations got in trouble, and we were always a step ahead of the game, thanks to Mark and him telling us, hey, make sure you do it this way.
Oh, wow.
And then we just got blessed with a bunch of just amazing, just role models and people who supported us and who kept pushing us. And I think a lot of it was that we were willing to do it for free. When we were going to get funded the first time by an organization on the West Coast, and they were going to give us like $30,000, which at the time was like millions of dollars for us, right? And they asked for the budget, and we turned the budget in, and they called us back, and they're like, so we're looking at this budget, and we still don't understand. You're a startup organization here, and we see that you're hiring an assistant and you're paying them, but we don't see a line item to pay yourselves. You're still not paying yourselves. And we're like, well, yeah, like we're the only idiots that'll keep doing this for free. If you want us to build the organization, we need to hire somebody to help us out. And they're like, no, guys, like that's not how this is going to work. So they were so sweet. They brought us to their home, and these amazing yogis. And this one house they had was a beautiful house. And the yogi's looking at us. He's like, hey, look, I'm a yogi, guys. He's like, look at my house. It's still nice. Yeah, and he
You
explained the
don't have to be
concept.
poor.
You don't have to be poor. He explained, he's like, you're going to burn out. He's like, you can't keep giving to the universe without being willing to receive.
Receive, yeah.
And that was such an important lesson for us because we were just working all these extra hours and just giving and giving and giving. And we didn't understand how important it was to receive. And that was a monumental step in our growth, because we started understanding that we can provide jobs to people who wouldn't usually have access to jobs. So the
Yeah,
majority of our
that's how
people
it
that we employ,
grows.
exactly, a lot of people that are our employees, they've been in troubling situations. They may have been incarcerated. They've made a mistake. People make mistakes,
Well,
but
yeah,
we're willing to give them a
I've done
second
plenty
chance.
too, don't worry.
Yeah.
I don't talk about all of them, but yeah, no, it's so important. And I think that's a big issue that yogis have. I had this for years too. Just teach for free, give for free, always
Yeah.
want it because you love it so much and it's given you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just
Exactly.
want the world to be practicing it no matter what. But then
For
we
sure.
also have this mindset. I think a lot of yogis go to it because they have this not scarcity mentality, but that if you do good things, it's free, it's selfless, which we're living in a world full of big egos. We need to have some ego
Oh,
to survive.
for sure. Certainly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the network's really important.
Network's important. Get
Yeah.
some people to, I would say, if we're going to do like a checklist, have your practice, find a space,
Mm-hmm.
get some study done just to show some evidence that's evidence-based. Try to get some funding,
Yeah.
and just don't give up. Just don't give up. Just keep doing it. People are going to see what you do. They're going to see the benefits, and you just never know. I know some people who have started and within a year have gotten an angel funder. And I'm
Wow.
talking somebody who's giving them millions of dollars. And me and my business partners are looking at them like, man, it's taken us 12 years. We still have not met that person, but still, you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So you just got to do it. Because a lot of times I think people are afraid to take that first step on that journey because they don't know, like, it's a lot and I'm taking on. Am I going to be able to pull this off? And, just so long as deep in your heart, if
That's
you
my
know,
question. Can I keep it going? And how realistic is it that it's sustainable, or that I could hire other people? Because that's also what I want this project to be.
yeah. And, so I would, when we started doing stuff, even like we're a nonprofit organization. So again, it depends on what kind of business you want to start. You might want to start a LLC or, for-profit organization that'll, for us, the nonprofit was our best bet because we would get grants. And when we first started, we would try to write the grants, and we recommend to not try and write the grant yourself. Bring on a grant writer. I mean, we're educated guys. I've written plenty of papers and research papers. It seems easy
to your work, I imagine, and then get into details.
Yeah, and then the thing is that find yourself a grant writer who knows the organizations, knows the language, knows the people that are reviewing the grant processes, that type of stuff. Because a large part is just putting yourself out there and meeting people who are going to love your work, and they're going to find a way to support you. And then slowly but surely, doors will open, connections will be made. You're going to continue to succeed because you have that love in your heart. This works. You have the compassion for other people. They're going to feel it, and they're going to start seeing the results. And people want to support good projects.
Yeah.
They don't have the time to do it themselves. So if they can financially give some money to help someone do good things for people, it makes them feel well, so eventually stuff starts growing. I never thought 20 years later that we'd have a multi-million-dollar organization hiring 40 to 50 people that may not have ever had jobs.
Wow, it's that big.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we've been all across the nation. We've been internationally. We've done work in Austria, Germany, South Korea, Lebanon. Where were we at just recently? Poland, Canada. I mean, I can keep like all over, and it's amazing. Sometimes we have translators because we don't know the language. Culturally, we're living completely different lives in these people, but the practice resonates.
Yeah.
When you close your eyes and you slow your breath down and you breathe and then you open your eyes up again, it doesn't matter where you're from, what you.
Can you give me some advice? I just worked with someone today who says, I don't do mindfulness. I don't want mindfulness. But it's exactly what she needs, because she wanted to work with emotions. I was like, okay, let's do a rain practice, this. And she's like, I'm never going to do this. Okay, so what do we do now? Because even if I do yoga therapy, there's always that aspect of mindfulness. You can't be therapeutically busy if you don't be mindful.
Yeah. I would say my advice would be just like, okay, fine, then we're not doing mindfulness, but you can still do mindfulness. Just don't call it. They might have a red flag when they hear that word. It's just like people say to me,
I didn't even say it. We were just doing something. She's like, I've done mindfulness before. I don't want to do mindfulness.
I mean, I wish I had $1 for every single time someone said, oh, I've tried meditation. I can't do that. And I always be like, how many times did you try it? And they're like, I tried it once. I'm like, once? Like, you just try it once? Like, you ever play any sport? Like, I always use basketball as an example. So if you shot a basketball once and then you didn't make it, were you like, I just can't do this basketball thing, it's impossible for me? No, you got to practice.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. I said, just be patient with yourself. Maybe you don't see any difference now, but over time there'll be change and you'll be able to handle the emotions much better.
It's so real. And it's funny. I usually ask them, what are your expectations out of this? Like, I always feel like a lot of times people, when it comes to mindfulness or yoga or meditation, that their expectations are so high. Like, did you expect to sit down for like 3 minutes and all your problems dissolve away? Like, no more stress or worry or anxiety. That's it. It's all gone. Like, the light shines through the clouds and stuff.
And you walk around
that doesn't happen. Like, we always tell people, you get out your meditation, what you're supposed to get out of your meditation that day, and it could be more, you could just be sitting there thinking with your monkey mind all the entire time, and you feel like that was the worst meditation ever. What a waste of my time, you'd think. But still, no, you have to deal with that stuff, because
it's the digestion of the mental processes that you haven't been able to go through because you're so busy all the time.
And that's the thing is, we always say we're called human beings, but we should be called human doings, right?
Yeah.
We're constantly doing stuff all the time.
And now we're eating on the psychological, mental, visual level, emotional level constantly. But when do we digest? When do we let it rest?
Exactly.
When do we excrete?
When do we just take a moment? And the thing is, people will see it. When you start getting into your practice and you start stilling your mind, so much stuff is going to come up. All that stuff throughout your life that you may not even remember pushing down and kind of hiding. I'll deal with that later. I'm good. I don't need it. All that comes up. So it can be difficult. So I think a lot of times for people, it's hard. It's almost like they try it and they feel some of that funkiness coming up and they're like, yeah, no, I don't like this. I don't need to do this. It's like, no, you got to get through that stuff. Let that stuff come up and deal with it. Because all of us have had ACEs, those adverse childhood experiences. All of us have had some form of trauma that we may not recognize that is impacting our lives right now. So we usually start with just a breath, just teaching people how to still themselves with their breath, because that's something that's simple and it usually makes them feel really good. It doesn't have that thing of meditation or yoga or mindfulness, even though it's a basic awareness practice. So it is getting them to still their mind. It's helping with their sympathetic nervous system, that it's making them learn how to shift from that stress state to their more relaxed state. And that's ultimately what we want them to do. We want them to get those tools and techniques to allow that. So I would just tinker with it a little, and figure out a way to be a little sneaky with. I mean, we work with a lot of kids, and kids are always like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't want to do it. This is lame. And I'm like, oh, this is lame, huh? I'm like, and I usually with kids, it's a little easier, but adults, sometimes we find their role models. I'm like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm like, oh, I want to be a basketball player. I'm like, surprise, surprise. You're in the inner city. You want to play basketball for the NBA and make millions of dollars. Now you do know, like 1 out of like 10 million kids make it in this field, right? But still, I don't want to, crush your hopes and dreams. That's great.
Yeah, don't do that.
I'm like, so who's your favorite basketball player? And they'll say it's like LeBron James. I'm like, oh yeah. And I'll type on my phone real quick, LeBron James meditating, and I'll show the picture to the kid.
Really?
And the kid will just get into a meditative posture.
Serious?
Like,
okay, that's a good one.
Okay, I'm ready then. So there's so many people out in the world who are these kids, or these even adults or teenagers, or kids in their early 20s who have people they look up to and they aspire to be. And if you show them that they do the practice as well, then sometimes it can kind of give them this concept like, you know what? Well, maybe I will try it, because if my role model, my hero is doing this, and look, and they're what I want to be, maybe I should try it. And usually it just takes one moment of stillness and silence during a practice when they're trying it for real, or afterwards, where they get that aha moment, like, wow, I can feel like this whenever I want to, at any time. I'm actually in charge of all this craziness that's been bombarding me externally, or the crazy talk in my head that's internally I'm dealing with all the time, that I can get a moment of just being. That's when their journey starts, I think, and that's when it starts growing.
The awareness of themselves being the masters of their life, actually. Have you seen or have you done the Goenka Vipassana?
I don't believe so.
No, you would know if you've done it. It's a 10-day silence meditation. It's not a retreat. And so it's a man, Goenka. He started it because he was a businessman, very rich, very powerful, in Myanmar, I believe. And he had chronic migraines all the time. And one of his friends told him he should do meditation. And then he found a teacher who was teaching the Goenka, or the Vipassana style. And it helped him so much that he started to propagate. He did this all on donation basis, these meditation retreat centers all around the world. First, he started in Myanmar, but it spread really quickly. And you can do these 10-day Vipassanas, and you just give what you can offer. So it's for anyone. And you learn the first 3 days is just focusing on the breath, becoming aware of the breath, and trying to get that sense of focus on a smaller and smaller area. And at the end of each day, there's a video where he talks about what happened that day, what were you thinking that day, all of the thoughts that passed, how you felt. And it's so funny because he's describing exactly what was going on. It's like he's reading your mind. But you're sitting in a room with 60 people and everyone's laughing at the same things. So everyone's going through the same things. And the last day, he shows a video of where he took meditation into the biggest prison in Delhi. And first he taught the prisoners, because the prison director, she wanted this to become a program in the prison. So first the guards had to all learn this technique, and he got hundreds of guards to do this. And then thousands and thousands of these prisoners started to do the retreats, and then they could keep it going. And at the end, you see like the prisoners hugging the guards, crying, because they understood they've ruined their own lives. They've created their misery. And there's this forgiveness and love and acceptance. It's so powerful. It's beautiful. And you can see this video online. It's called Doing Time, Doing Vipassana.
I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, you should. It's really amazing. Yeah. And I suggest to anyone, do a Vipassana, if you have time in your life, you really want to learn something.
Oh, yeah.
About the mind.
I love it. I would recommend it too. It's a little bit of silence. Never. I wish it could be silent all the time, honestly.
What, the mind? No, I like the noise.
No.
And the creativity. I like all of it. I've really made friends with all of the mind. Well, what I know that's there. There's still obviously hidden things that come out all of a sudden. So tell us about your book.
Yeah, so we came out with a book finally. It's called Let Your Light Shine: How Mindfulness Can Empower Children and Rebuild Communities. And basically what it is, it's kind of our story. It talks about Ali and Atma's parents, our teacher, and their upbringing, and some of the traumatic events they had to go through being minorities in America. and then talks about the history of some of the atrocities that have been done to minorities throughout the world, and how this is still commonplace here, and how even when you're in this darkness, you can let your light shine. And that's through some of these practices that our teachers have taught us, which is this yoga and meditation, breathing techniques and stuff like that. Something that's really cool about it is, so in schools, and we touched on this a little, when we're working as a Holistic Life Foundation, we have to kind of, for lack of a better word, water it down a little, because we have to make sure that people don't think that we're teaching religion, and we're not. We're a secular organization. We're not Buddhist. We're not Hindu. A lot of our practice stem from Hindu tradition and Buddhist traditions, but our teacher pulled from everywhere. So, he, anywhere where he saw a concept that he thought was
works.
Yeah. Right. Some contemplative practice. He said, hey, try this technique. This is how we're going to do it. So something that's really excited about the book. So the first part one is kind of, the history in the past and how it's still going on today, and how the Holistic Life Foundation started. And then part two is techniques for the reader to start using to kind of go inward and start starting their own practice, and how they can deal with the stuff that's bombarding us throughout the day, or like I said, internally or externally, but also just dealing with life, stress, anxiety, worries, adversities that face you and hit you. And it's a variety of tools from movement techniques to breathing techniques, meditations. But then we could go deeper, and I included some mantras and some mudras and stuff that Ali Atman and I use in our practice that really, really impacted us. I remember when we first started going in schools, and I couldn't talk about chakras. I'm like, what do you mean I can't talk about the chakras? And they're like, these things are real. And they're like, yeah, but we can't talk about that in school. And even when we did our first,
isn't it?
It's crazy.
It's hard to not say anything when it can help people so much.
I know it will, and it's a part of your real self. And it was funny. I remember when we did that first study, like take all the yoga out. So we called it a stress and relaxation study, not a yoga study, stress and relaxation study. And they were like, they were very specific that I can't say the word yoga. But I would go into a school and say, hey, I'm here for the stress and relaxation study. And then on the loudspeaker, they say, all right, everyone, all the kids, report downstairs for yoga. And I'm like, I didn't say it. All right. It was so funny. So in this book, it's really exciting because we can share some of that stuff just like that we know made a huge difference in our journey. I mean, I don't hit the mat as much as I used to, I'm a little older. I'm not as limber as I was before. I'm still in great shape, you know what I mean? But I just,
the body doesn't need it as well. I'm the same. I'm now 47 and I practice max 20 minutes physical, and then it's more breath work, meditation,
mantras. And I chant mantras all day in my head. That to me is like, that's my baby, like anytime. Our teacher calls the mind that the mind can be a drunk monkey on LSD, is what he used to say to us. So whenever my drunk monkey on LSD is going a little too crazy, I chant my mantras, and it's immediate for me that it gets me back into my center. So we just want to provide as many different tools to individuals as we can, because we understand this concept of unity and oneness, but we're also in the human experience, and there's a million different paths for a million different individuals. So in part two, we're just providing as many techniques that we can to allow people to let their light shine, to remove some of that dust that's covering that omnipotent, that omnipotent, omniscient power within us that we all have, and just reminding people about that. And then part three is more about, if people were to be interested, once they've kind of gone and self-discovered and self-realized who they really are, and they're better to deal with the bombardment of everything, if they want to take that next step and start helping people, like we were talking about earlier in the podcast of, if I want to do this, how can I do it? Well, that third part is really about that. Just reminding people, about authenticity, about being practical, about making it relatable, about having fun when you're teaching this stuff. This doesn't have to be so stiff and you're not,
that was like, the funny thing. I tried in the beginning. I think that just the first lesson or second lesson with kids, to be a yoga teacher, it's like, it's not how you do yoga with kids. You have to be totally improvisatory. Do you say And and you really learn to let go and be in the moment. And it's so important how you walk into the room, isn't it? Because they really pick up on how you feel.
Certainly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our teacher used to always say to us, in part of my language, because I said he is the Sam Jackson, but he would always say, if your class isn't laughing, you ain't doing shit. That's what he used to always say to us. And you're supposed to have fun with it, So just reminding people. And then we also remind people, one of the main concepts in that third part is to not have that savior mentality. Like, you're not don't come into some community or country or anywhere like, oh, I'm here, the wise.
I have the answers.
Yeah, right.
Listen,
don't do that. Yeah, no. Understand where your audience is coming from. Understand what they're going through.
Yeah, when you're working in communities and schools, because I've taught in community centers and schools, and also just normal yoga studios, and it's a huge difference when there's not a pressure, money pressure, like and what do you call this? You have to prestige, you have to show off in certain places.
Exactly.
When you don't have that level, it is just more fun, because you relate to people in a very social, open, playful way. And
just
then
be yourself.
Yeah.
It's so important. Yeah. So I mean, that's what's exciting about this, is that we get to introduce new techniques and hopefully help people and spread the word more, because the Holistic Life Foundation, our goal is to help people help themselves and to be a resource and to support individuals, whether it's an organization or just one person that wants to start taking that new journey. Our teacher used to always say that phrase, the longest journey starts with one step. And if we can get people just to take that first step and start going on their own personal inner journey, that's what we want to do, so that everyone can let their light shine and ideally can empower people, and then start building that village feeling in all the communities that we had. I feel like when I was a little younger, that's kind of fallen away a little, and it's just everyone's just stuck on their phones and they don't even care about what's going on in their surroundings, where if we can increase a little awareness and give tools to everyone, that's the goal. So hopefully
get out of your head and get into your body and surroundings.
Heck yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So where can people find your book?
So then go to letyourlightshinebook.com. Okay. And on that link, you can go and you'll see other links. So you can buy it on Amazon. You can go to Barnes and Noble. There's just a plethora of bookstores you can buy it at. But then also, we always like to remind people, check out your local bookstores too, because we like to support local organizations. So, a lot of times you'll find maybe one or two copies there. We'd always say, we'd rather you give it to the local mom and pop shop that's selling stuff than the big Amazon person. But totally, sometimes Amazon's a little easier for everybody.
Yeah, but I'm doing the same, and I was kind of apprehensive, especially when I had less money to buy from the little shop, and then I realized they're the same price or even cheaper sometimes.
Heck yeah. And then you're supporting your community. Support the little people. Heck yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you feel we haven't touched on that you still want to share?
No, I mean, this is really amazing. I really appreciate you having me on and helping us, promote the book and the organization. One thing that we always say to people whenever every one of our talks last 20 years, we always end the same way. We just remind people, don't forget that love is the most powerful force in the universe and that we love everybody. Love all y'all. Thanks for listening.
That's so lovely. Yes. Love to you too. Wow. So thank you everyone for staying to the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I really love doing these talks with these amazing people. And if you want to know more, just take a look in the show notes. There's plenty of links and ways to connect with either the guest or myself. If you want to work with us or find out more about us, just check out the information in the show notes. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend or week, and you'll be hearing from me next week.